The night was heavy with silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something waiting to kill. The forest was black, the trees twisted, their shadows stretching like claws. Even the wind refused to move. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. And then came the sound. Growls. Deep, wet, and hungry. The kind of sound that made the skin crawl and the heart stop. Hundreds of eyes glowed in the dark. They were not the eyes of men or beasts, but monsters. Creatures born to tear and feed. In the middle of this nightmare stood a human. Alone. He had no army behind him, no shield wall, no fortress to hide in. Just his scarred body. A blade dull with old blood and armor cracked like broken stone. He was breathing hard, sweat mixing with dirt on his face. His ribs ached from old wounds. His left arm trembled when he raised his weapon. But his eyes burned like fire. He had come for one reason. The twins. Somewhere in the heart of this monster nest, two alien children were trapped. Their cries had reached him, even through the storm of growls and roars. And when he heard those cries, something inside him answered. He could not leave them. He would not. The monsters circled him. Their jaws opened, dripping with saliva that hissed when it touched the ground. Their claws scraped against stone and bark. Their bodies were thick with scales, fur, and bone, stitched together by nature's cruel hand. One monster lunged forward. The human moved. His blade flashed once. A clean cut. The beast fell, its neck split open, black blood splashing across the ground. The others screamed. An angry, chilling sound that shook the forest. And then they attacked. 10 rushed him at once, their claws slicing the air. The human ducked, spun, and slashed. His blade cut through 2 throats. A third beast leapt at his back, but he rolled forward, stabbing upward into its belly. He moved like a man who had nothing left to lose. Every strike was filled with rage, with desperation, with something far stronger than fear. But the monsters were endless. For every one he cut down, 5 more stepped out of the dark. The ground shook with their weight. The trees snapped under their bodies. The human's breath came in sharp bursts. His arms were heavy, but he did not stop. He could not stop. His voice broke the night. "You will not touch them." The monsters hissed in reply as if mocking his defiance. One beast twice his size crashed forward, its jaws wide enough to swallow him whole. He sidestepped at the last second, dragging his blade across its throat. The creature's body collapsed like a falling tree, but already another was there, clawing for his chest. The blade met claw. Sparks flew. Pain shot through his arm as the force nearly shattered his wrist. He gritted his teeth and pushed back, roaring, forcing the beast to the ground before driving steel into its skull. Blood covered him now, his and theirs. His armor cracked more with every blow. His skin split open from claws that almost reached too deep. But the fire in his eyes never dimmed. He remembered the cries. The twins' voices, small, weak, calling for help. That memory pushed his body beyond its limits. Another wave came, 20 this time. They moved together like a tide of death. He stood his ground, planting his feet in the dirt. His blade spun in his hands, ready for the storm. He could taste iron in his mouth, feel the ache in every bone. But he smiled, a thin, broken smile. "This is only the beginning," he whispered to himself. The first beast leapt. He cut it down. Another clawed at his side. He blocked, barely. 3 more rushed, but he swung with wild fury, his blade tearing through them. His body screamed for rest, but he answered with violence. The forest became a blur of motion, steel and shadow, blood and roars. And yet, still the monsters came. Hundreds, maybe more. Their numbers were endless. Their hunger unstoppable. The human stood in the center of it all, one man against a sea of nightmares. His chest rose and fell, each breath heavier than the last, but his hands never loosened their grip on the blade. His eyes never turned away from the darkness, because beyond that darkness, the twins were waiting. And no matter how many monsters came, no matter how much blood he lost, he would fight until his last breath to reach them. The night thundered with the sound of claws and screams. The earth shook with the weight of monsters rushing forward, and the human, scarred and broken, raised his blade for the first strike. The forest roared. The battle had begun. The first strike was only the beginning. The ground was now black with blood, the smell of iron sharp in the air. The human's chest rose and fell like a drumbeat of war. His arms were tired, his legs heavy, but still he stood. Around him the forest glowed with hundreds of hateful eyes. The monsters had not stopped. They would not stop. One came from the left, teeth dripping poison. He cut it down. Another lunged from above, claws stretched wide. He rolled aside, stabbing upward as the creature fell. Its scream shook the trees, but for everyone he killed, more appeared. 10, 20, 50. The forest itself seemed alive with them. They filled every shadow, every branch, every rock. The sound of their growls was like thunder, endless, crushing. The human's arms began to shake. Sweat burned his eyes. His hands slipped on the sword hilt, wet with blood. Still, he whispered, "Not yet. Not yet." The monsters circled tighter. They had learned his speed, his rhythm. They did not rush blindly now. They moved together, smarter, deadlier. Their yellow eyes never left him. One struck low. Another struck high. Their timing perfect. He blocked one, barely dodged the other, but the third beast's claw raked across his side. His body jolted with pain. Warm blood poured down his waist. He stumbled but did not fall. The monsters roared as if smelling his weakness. He forced himself upright, pressing a bloody hand against the wound. "Not yet," he growled through clenched teeth. His sword answered for him. The blade flashed, cutting through another beast. The cry of the dying monster echoed in the night, but already more pressed forward. Claw after claw, fang after fang. The human's movements grew slower. His body screamed for rest, but his spirit refused to listen. He remembered the twins, their cries, their tiny voices calling for help in the dark. That memory burned hotter than the pain. His blade rose again. And again 10 monsters fell. Then 20 more. He fought like a man possessed, like a storm trapped in human flesh. Each strike was brutal, final. Each step forward was one with blood, but the monsters adapted. They were clever now. They attacked in groups of 5, forcing him to move in every direction at once. Claws scraped across his chest, tearing armor, tearing flesh. His blood painted the forest floor. For the first time, his knee hit the ground. The monsters screamed with victory, their voices sharp and cruel, but the human lifted his head. His eyes burned, wild with defiance. "Not tonight," he spat. With a roar, he pushed himself back to his feet. His blade spun in a wide arc, cutting 3 monsters in half at once. Their bodies collapsed in a heap of black blood. The ground shook under their weight, but the tide did not end. From the dark, new shapes crawled forward, larger than the rest. Their backs bristled with spikes, their mouths stretched wider than their bodies. Poison dripped from their teeth, melting the ground where it fell. The human staggered, gasping for breath. His vision blurred, his sword felt heavier than iron itself. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds now. His skin burned, his bones screamed, his muscles tore with every swing, and yet, he smiled. "This is nothing," he whispered, blood running from his lips. "I have faced worse. And I still stand." The monsters hissed, their claws digging into the soil as they prepared to rush him. The human raised his blade high. His body swayed, close to collapse, but his spirit blazed like fire. And then, he charged. He met them head on. His blade sang, cutting through flesh and bone. Black blood sprayed across his face. The monsters shrieked, biting and clawing, but he pressed forward step by step. One beast clamped its jaws onto his arm, teeth sinking deep. Pain like fire shot through his body. He screamed, not in fear but in rage. With his free hand, he drove the blade straight into its skull. The beast fell limp, still locked onto his arm. He kicked it away, blood pouring down his skin. Another claw struck his back. Another jaw ripped into his leg. His whole body was breaking apart, but his eyes never turned away from the darkness. He saw the faint glow of light far beyond the monsters. The place where the twins were trapped, and that was enough. He raised his blade once more, though his body begged to fall. His voice thundered across the forest. "You will not have them." The monsters rushed, a wave of claws, teeth, and shadows. And in the middle of that storm, the human roared and swung his blade with all that was left inside him. The forest shook. The night trembled. The impossible battle had truly begun. The forest shook with screams and steel. Every roar, every clash of blade against claw reached the ears of the twins hiding in the monster nest. They were small, no more than 8 years old, their skin pale under the moonlight, their eyes wide with fear, their bodies pressed close together, trembling as they crouched inside a hollow stone cage the monsters had built with twisted roots and rocks. The air smelled of blood. The ground quivered with each strike. The girl whispered to her brother, her voice shaking. "He's still fighting." The boy clutched her hand, too scared to answer. His chest rose and fell so fast it hurt. All he could hear was the sound of monsters dying and the human's desperate roar echoing through the night. They had never seen a human before. Only stories told by their mother. Stories of fragile bodies and short lives. Stories of a race always at the edge of extinction. Stories that never spoke of a man like this. The boy dared to look through a crack in the stone wall. What he saw made his breath stop. The human was covered in blood, his own and the monster's. His armor hung in pieces, his face pale with exhaustion, and yet he moved, his sword rising and falling, cutting down monsters one after another. Around him lay bodies, dozens, maybe hundreds, but still the monsters came, crawling over their own dead to reach him. The boy whispered, Why is he still standing?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. For us. The words cut deep into their hearts because it was true. He did not know their names. He did not know their family. Yet he fought, bled, and broke himself apart only to reach them. The girl covered her mouth to silence her sobs, but her tears would not stop. She wanted to scream, to tell him to stop, to run away before the monsters killed him, but she could not. Because she knew if he stopped, they would die. The cage shook as a monster slammed against it, trying to break inside. Its claws scraped the stone, sparks flying in the dark. The twins screamed and pressed back against the far wall. The human heard them. His head turned, eyes locking on the cage. For just a moment his face softened. Despite the blood, despite the pain, his eyes told them one thing. Hold on. I'm coming. Then he turned back, facing the swarm once more. The boy's heart pounded. He wanted to believe, but his eyes saw the truth. The human was broken. His legs shook. His wounds bled without end. Every swing of his blade grew slower, heavier. How can one man fight so many? He whispered. The girl answered, her voice trembling but strong. Because no one else would. The monsters roared again. A dozen charged toward the cage. The twins screamed, thinking it was the end. But the human moved. He threw himself into their path, sword flashing, cutting them down before they could reach the children. His body took the blows. Claws tore his back, fangs cut into his arm, but he stood firm, forcing them back. The boy's hands shook as he clutched the stone wall. He'll die. The girl shook her head, though her tears betrayed her. Not yet. Not until we are safe. The monsters howled in fury, their voices blending into a storm of rage. They wanted the twins. They would not stop until the cage was broken. The boy shut his eyes, pressing his forehead against the stone. He wished he could be brave like the man. He wished he could fight. But all he could do was listen, trapped in fear. Then came a sound that froze their hearts. The human cried out. Not in rage this time, but in pain. A beast had struck deep, tearing into his shoulder. His sword slipped from his grip, crashing to the ground. The boy gasped. The girl screamed. The human staggered, blood pouring down his chest. The monsters closed in, sensing his weakness. Their claws rose, ready to strike him down, but then something changed. The twins saw it. His body was breaking, but his spirit was not. His hand reached down, grabbing the sword once more. His face twisted with pain, but his eyes blazed with fury. With a roar, he rose again. The monsters shrieked in frustration as his blade cut through them once more. He fought like a man who no longer cared about his own life, only theirs. The girl clutched her brother's hand tighter. He won't stop. Not for us. And in that moment, despite their fear, the twins felt something they had never felt before. Hope. The forest was filled with blood and screams. But inside their hearts, a new fire began to burn, because they knew. If one human could stand against hundreds for them, then maybe, just maybe, they could live through this night. The monsters pressed forward. The human roared back and the twins clung to each other, knowing the battle was far from over. The terror was real, the danger endless. But so was the hope. The night was endless. The ground was a graveyard of monsters. Their bodies lay broken, their blood soaking the soil, their screams still echoing in the air. But the human was not whole. His body shook as if every bone had cracked. His skin was cut open in 100 places. His sword arm trembled, barely able to lift the blade. His breath came in broken gasps, each one sharper than a knife in his chest. And still, the monsters came. They crawled over the bodies of their dead, their claws glinting, their jaws dripping with poison. They wanted the twins. They wanted the human's flesh. They wanted blood, and they would not stop until nothing remained but silence. The human staggered backward, pressing one hand against his side. Blood ran through his fingers like water. His knees buckled. His vision blurred. For the first time, he almost fell. The twins cried out from their cage, their voices piercing the storm of growls and roars. "Don't stop," the girl screamed, tears falling down her face. "Please don't stop." The boy clutched the bars of the stone cage, his small hands bleeding as he shouted, "Get up, please." The human heard them, but his body betrayed him. His sword slipped in his grip, falling low. His chest heaved as if the weight of the world pressed down on him. The monsters saw his weakness. They circled closer, their roars turning into cruel laughter. One beast, larger than the rest, stepped forward. Its claws were as long as swords, its eyes burning with hunger. It struck. The human raised his blade too slow. The claws cut across his chest, tearing armor, tearing flesh. He screamed as his body was thrown backward, crashing hard against the earth. The twins screamed too, their voices breaking with terror. The human lay still for a moment. Blood pooled beneath him. His sword was a few feet away, glinting in the dirt. His body refused to move, and for a moment, he thought it was over. The sky above spun. His ears rang with the sound of monsters closing in. His heart pounded weakly. He thought of the twins. He thought of their small voices calling for him, begging him not to stop, and then he thought of his scars. Each one carried a memory. Battles fought, friends lost, promises made, promises broken. Every scar was a story of pain and survival. Every scar was proof that he was still standing, even when the world wanted him gone. He remembered the night his village burned. He remembered the faces of children who never had a savior. He remembered swearing he would never let it happen again. No child dies tonight. The words burned in his mind. Something inside him stirred, something older than fear, deeper than pain. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. Not yet. Not ever. With a roar that shook the night, he forced himself to his knees. His hand reached out, blood dripping, fingers shaking, but he grabbed the sword once more. The steel felt heavier than stone, but he lifted it. The monsters hissed, angered that their prey still lived. The massive beast lunged again, claws descending like death. The human rose. He swung with everything left in him. The blade met flesh, cutting through the monster's chest. The beast screamed, its blood spraying across the forest before it collapsed into the dirt. The twins gasped, their hearts racing. The human's body swayed, ready to collapse, but his eyes were alive again. They burned with fury, with fire, with something no monster could ever match. The swarm roared in rage, hundreds of voices shaking the trees. But he did not step back. He stood taller, his chest bleeding, his breath heavy, yet his blade ready. "You will not take them," he growled. His voice was raw, broken, but filled with power. "Not while I still breathe." The monsters charged. The human met them head on. His strikes grew faster, sharper. He fought not like a dying man, but like a storm reborn. His blade became a flash of light in the dark, cutting down beast after beast. The ground shook with their deaths. Their roars turned to screams of pain. The twins clung to each other, their tears mixed with awe. They saw him not as a man anymore, but as something greater, something unstoppable. For every drop of blood he lost, his strikes grew stronger. For every wound that burned his flesh, his spirit only burned brighter. The human was no longer fighting just to survive. He was fighting to win. And as the night raged on, as monsters fell one by one, the twins realized the truth. This was not the end. This was the turning point. The monsters had seen his weakness, but now they would see his fury, and he would not stop until every last one of them lay dead at his feet. The forest had become a battlefield of shadows and blood. The human stood surrounded by broken bodies, his chest heaving, his sword dripping black gore. Every breath burned like fire in his lungs. Every step was pain, yet he still stood. The monsters, once fearless, now hesitated. Their numbers were falling, their screams mixing with the silence of death. But the human's strength was fading too, and they could smell it. His wounds leaked rivers of red, his skin pale as bone. The twins clung to the bars of their cage, their small faces pressed between the cracks. Their eyes were wide with both terror and awe. They had seen him fall and rise, bleed and roar, fight like no man they had ever imagined. But they knew. He could not last forever. The monsters knew it too. They circled again, waiting, watching. Their growls grew low, deeper like drums in the night. The ground shook softly. The trees trembled. Something was coming. The human's eyes narrowed. He felt it before he saw it. The weight of the air shifted, the earth groaned, the shadows stretched, and then it appeared, the colossal monster. It emerged from the dark like a living mountain, taller than the trees, wider than a house. Its skin was armored in bone, its claws longer than swords, its head bent low, jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole. When it roared, the night itself seemed to shatter. The smaller monsters stepped back, bowing their heads as if their king had arrived. The twins screamed in terror, clinging to each other. "No, no, no, no," the girl cried. The boy's voice broke. "He can't fight that. He'll die." The human's heart pounded. His body screamed for rest, for surrender. His blood soaked the earth beneath his boots. But his grip on the sword did not loosen. He raised his blade slowly, painfully, but firmly. "Then come," he whispered. His voice cracked but carried. "Come and try." The colossal beast lowered its head, its glowing eyes locking on him. Its breath rolled across the forest like hot wind, thick with the stench of rot. Saliva dripped from its teeth, sizzling on the ground. It stepped forward. The earth shook beneath its weight. Each step was like a drumbeat of doom. The human planted his feet. He felt small, so small before this mountain of death. His legs trembled, but his spirit burned hotter than ever. The beast roared and charged, the ground split under its weight. Trees snapped like twigs as it rushed forward, claws slicing through the air. The smaller monsters screamed, excited for the kill. The twins cried out his name, though they didn't even know it. They cried for him, prayed for him, begged for him to survive. The human raised his blade, the steel shaking in his hands. His breath came in short bursts. His vision blurred from blood loss. He knew this strike could be his last, but he did not run. He ran toward it. The forest exploded with sound as man and monster clashed. The beast's claw swung down faster than any mountain should move. The human dodged, the air from the strike knocking him to the ground. Dirt and blood filled his mouth, but he rolled to his feet, slashing upward. His blade cut across the beast's leg, sparks flying as steel met bone. The monster roared in fury, the sound deafening. Its tail whipped around, crashing into the ground near him, sending him flying backward. His body slammed against a tree. Bones screamed. Blood sprayed. He coughed, dragging himself to his feet again. His sword was still in his hand, cracked but unbroken. The colossal beast turned, its eyes glowing hotter now, filled with rage. It charged again. The human stood, legs shaking, vision fading, body broken. He lifted his sword with both hands, his voice breaking into a roar that shook his own chest. For them, the beast's shadow covered him, its massive jaws opening wide, teeth like knives ready to tear him apart. The twins screamed, their voices echoing across the battlefield. The human raised his blade one last time. His body swayed. His eyes blazed. His voice whispered through bloodied lips. "This ends now." The monster's jaws crashed down and the forest fell silent. The jaws came down like falling stone. The colossal beast's teeth crashed toward him, glowing with saliva that burned the earth where it dripped. The twins screamed, pressing their small hands against the cage bars, unable to look away. And then, steel met bone. The human had thrust his sword upward with every drop of strength left inside him. The blade drove deep into the roof of the monster's mouth. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Then the forest shook with a scream so loud it split the night. The colossal beast reared back, thrashing, its claws tearing trees from the earth. Its roar rolled through the air like thunder, scattering the smaller monsters in fear. The ground cracked beneath its weight as it staggered. The human's body was thrown aside by the force, his sword still buried inside the beast's skull. He hit the ground hard, rolling across dirt and blood. Pain tore through him like fire, but his eyes never closed. He pushed himself up, barely. His arms trembled, his breath ragged. His ribs screamed, his vision swam, but he refused to let go. The beast stumbled, blood gushing from its mouth and nose. Its eyes, once burning with hunger, flickered like dying flames. But still it did not fall. It lunged again, slower this time, broken but furious. Its claws dragged furrows in the earth as it crawled toward him. The human forced his body forward, step by step, staggering, bleeding, breaking. He grabbed the hilt of the sword, still buried in the beast's mouth. With a roar that tore his throat raw, he pushed deeper, forcing the blade into bone, into brain, until the steel snapped under the pressure. The monster froze. Its body shuddered once, then twice, before collapsing to the ground with a crash that shook the forest. Trees fell, dust rose. The earth groaned. Silence followed. The smaller monsters shrieked in terror, their voices sharp and high. For the first time, fear filled their eyes. Their king was dead, their numbers broken one by one. They fled into the night, vanishing into shadows, leaving behind only the smell of blood and the sound of silence. The twins pressed against the cage, their eyes wide, their hearts racing. They had seen the impossible. One man alone had slain them all. The human stood swaying, surrounded by death. His body was covered in blood from head to toe. His face pale, his eyes dark, but still burning faintly. He took one step, then another, staggering toward the cage. The girl whispered, "He's alive." The boy whispered back, "He did it." The human reached the cage. His hand, shaking and broken, touched the stone bars. His voice came out low, weak but steady. "You're safe now." Tears ran down the twins' faces. They reached for him through the cracks, their small hands pressing against his bloody skin. But the human's strength was gone. His knees buckled. His body collapsed onto the ground. He lay there motionless, his breath shallow, his eyes half closed. The forest was silent except for the twins' cries. The girl shouted, "Don't leave us." Her small fists hit the bars. "Please," the boy called out, his voice breaking. "You can't stop now. You saved us." The human's lips moved faintly. His voice was no more than a whisper, but the twins heard it. Every scar. Worth it. Then his eyes closed. The twins froze, their hearts sinking. They thought it was the end. They thought he was gone. But then they heard it, faint, weak, but real. His breathing. He was still alive. The girl sobbed, her face pressed against the bars. "He's not gone. He's still here." The boy nodded fiercely, tears in his eyes. "He fought for us. We won't let him die." The silence of the forest grew heavy again, but it was not the silence of monsters waiting. It was the silence after war, the silence of victory. The ground was littered with bodies. The trees dripped with blood. The air was heavy with death, but the human had stood against them all. The twins clung to hope, their small voices whispering his name over and over, as if keeping him alive by calling him back. The forest had fallen quiet. The monsters were gone. The battle was over. Victory had come, and in its shadow lay silence. The forest was quiet now, too quiet. The monsters had fled, their shadows gone, their roars swallowed by the night. What remained was the battlefield, hundreds of broken bodies, rivers of dark blood, and silence so heavy it pressed on the chest. In the middle of it all lay the human. He was sprawled on the ground, his armor shattered, his skin torn, his blood painting the dirt. His chest rose and fell slowly, each breath weaker than the last. His sword lay broken beside him, half buried in mud and gore. And yet he lived. The twins huddled against the bars of their cage, their faces wet with tears. They whispered his name again and again like a prayer, afraid he would slip away if they stopped. Then the forest shifted. A new sound echoed through the trees, soft, graceful, yet filled with power. The crack of branches, the whisper of leaves moving aside. The twins looked up. A figure stepped into the clearing. Tall, radiant, wrapped in robes of deep blue silk that shimmered in the faint moonlight. Her skin glowed faintly, her hair silver like starlight, her eyes burning with both fury and sorrow. It was their mother, the matriarch of their people. When her eyes fell on the battlefield, her breath caught. She saw the endless bodies of monsters. She saw the rivers of black blood. She saw her children alive inside the broken cage, and then she saw him, the human. Her heart clenched. This man was no soldier of hers, no knight sworn to her cause. Yet he had stood alone against an army for the sake of her children. His body was ruined, his life hanging by a thread, but he had not stopped until they were safe. Her hands trembled as she raised them, and with a single motion, the cage of roots and stone broke apart. The twins ran to her, crying, clutching at her robes. She knelt, holding them close, pressing her lips to their foreheads, whispering words of comfort. But her eyes never left the human. Slowly, carefully, she walked to him. She knelt at his side, brushing dirt and blood from his face with trembling fingers. His skin was cold, his pulse weak, but his eyes opened faintly, just enough to see her. He tried to speak, but no sound came. Only blood touched his lips. "Do not speak," she whispered. Her voice shook with both strength and sorrow. "You have done more than any being could. Rest now." The human's eyes closed again, his chest still rising, faint but steady. The twins clung to her, their small voices pleading, "Don't let him die, Mother. Please." She looked at them, then back at him, and in that moment her choice was made. She placed both hands over his broken chest. A soft light spread from her palms, sinking into his wounds. The ground itself seemed to hush, as if watching. His bleeding slowed. His breathing deepened. The cuts across his body began to close, not fully, but enough. Enough to keep him from death's grip. The human groaned faintly, his body shifting under her touch. His eyes opened once more, this time clearer. He saw her and for a moment thought he was dreaming. She spoke softly, her voice like the weight of 1,000 promises. "Every scar you carry is proof of who you are. You have bought their lives with your pain, and for that no treasure is enough. My people cannot repay you with gold or land. What I give you now is greater." The twins watched, eyes wide, as their mother leaned closer. Her silver hair brushed his bloodied skin, her glowing eyes locking on his. "You are family now, forever. As long as my bloodline lives, you will not stand alone." Her words were not just spoken, they were a vow. Power passed from her to him, unseen but felt. The forest seemed to breathe again. The night air grew lighter, as if the world itself had witnessed her promise. The human's chest rose stronger, his breath steadier. The fire in his eyes, once dimmed, sparked again. He tried to rise, but she pressed him back gently. "Rest, the war is done. Your scars are not marks of weakness. They are the price of love, the price of courage." The twins crawled to his side, their small hands clutching his. "You saved us," the girl whispered. The boy added, voice shaking, "You're our hero." The human looked at them, his lips curving faintly, painfully into the smallest of smiles. "Every scar," he rasped, "was worth it." The matriarch's eyes glistened. She placed her hand over his once more. "Then let the stars carry your name. Let the galaxy know that one human stood against the darkness, and one." The forest, once a place of fear, now lay silent in reverence. The monsters were gone. The twins were safe. And the human, scarred but alive, had been given more than reward. He had been given a place, a family, and a legacy that would outlast even the stars. The night ended not in screams, but in silence. A silence filled with victory. A silence filled with promise.